Ladies and gentlemen, do you remember the good old days of being rated 300 at chess? Me neither. Actually, the first tournament I ever played when I was 7 years old, I got up to about 800, and I never really looked back, but that's not the point. The point is that we all start someplace. Some of us are 200, 100, 300, and you go up and up that rating ladder. 300 is a very, very fascinating battleground because there are people who know absolutely nothing about the game, but they win literally by the sheer hands of the chess gods. There are people who are actually studying openings, putting in the work, and just slowly working their way up. People who just attack with the queen. People who just play really fast and throw all their pieces. People who play really slow and are winning but lose on time, and everything in between. So the game that we are about to look at was posted on Reddit Chess Beginners. It was a just unbelievable battle. Had everything. Twists, turns, like soap operas. So we're going to watch the game. Shout out to our protagonist from Canada who submitted this game, Blondie. They both get honorary Grandmaster titles. As always, they are separated by 1 rating point. We will watch this game with the eval bar. And before I get into the games, it's kind of fitting I'm making this video on 420 because this game was out there. So D4. And Blondie plays the London. So here we have an example of an individual who has consumed some YouTube content, wants an easy to learn opening, and plays it. Black responds with knight f6. And Blondie immediately throws into the waste bin all the hours that they have spent on opening preparation, watching YouTube videos, maybe buying a course, because this is just not the move. This opening is known as the Jobava London. I have played it myself. It has been played by good players, including Jobava, the person it's named after, with the intention of knight b5, knight c7. But that's absolutely not what White is trying to do here. White is basically just trying to move knights into the middle. When you're playing the London as a beginner, you really want to build the pawn pyramid and then put this knight here. But you know what? I don't really hate it. Both players move their knights out like this. Although this is almost a completely losing move because White can play knight b5, creating this attack on the c7 square, and it's almost impossible to stop. Black has to find the only stockfish move here, and if Black doesn't find it, Black just loses the game. And that move is e7 to e5. And yes, that is a loss of a pawn. Absolutely. So you got to give up a pawn in order not to lose a rook or a queen. So yeah, knight b5 would have been devastating. If you want to play knight and bishop London, Jobava style, you can always keep in mind this knight b5. Knight f3. And now, with 300 level videos, you don't need to wait long for things to get real spicy. And here they get spicy immediately as Black tries to put a second pawn directly in the middle of the board. I always say 2 pawns in the center if you can. If you can't put this pawn 2 squares, then you should put it 1 square, but then it would block the bishop. Which is why in this position, this is the best move. Or this. And then, e6. And you're fine. You have a completely normal position. But this is just no good because this is just a counting mistake, right? But I think Black is trying to play a gambit here. Black is trying to play something we call the Shakkaloo Gambit. White now sees that the bishop is under attack and proceeds to retreat it, which is really a very principled response, if not for the fact that you can just absolutely win this with any one of these pieces. However, it is definitely better to take with pawn or knight. You don't want to give up a bishop for no reason. And this move just attacks this and also opens the door for the queen and the knight this way. Bishop g3 is not a good move. But that is just the beginning of the bad moves. Black here notices that this pawn can also take here. But the mirror image was for some reason missed. White here has a choice between queen takes and knight takes, and considering that it is defended by a knight, if you want to do a Botez impression, you can play queen takes d4. However, if you want to play the best move, in this position, you should play knight takes d4, inviting an exchange of knights. Here, White plays an absolutely fascinating move. A move that I cannot even begin to fathom. It's probably too strong for my understanding. That move is e4. So in the span of like 3 moves, we just go from normal book opening to White being completely winning, to Black being better, to Black being completely winning -7. It's -7 for a couple of reasons. First of all, this is just the free knight. Like, you just let the pawn survive through fire, take your center, and now take your knight. Maybe it'll take the pawn, and maybe it'll even go to the other side of the earth. Like when you used to dig in the backyard as a kid? Trying to dig a hole to the center of the earth? Yeah, that's what that pawn is going to do. The other thing is, this is also just completely free. Like, I don't understand. If you lost this center pawn this way, what makes you think that you're... Like, this can... What? You got 2 hanging knights now. And now you can't even take this because the queen is defending it. So, what? I don't know. But I think e4 is just one of these moves that's just beyond my understanding. Maybe Blondie thought that en passant was forced. Like, maybe they didn't think that that's just a meme. Maybe they thought that, well, they have to go here. It's like checkers. So, I don't know. I cannot explain the logic of that move to you, but I can explain that it did occur. Black proceeds to take the knight, which is a fantastic move, obviously. And now white has the option between taking this and doing something with this pawn. White proceeds to go e5, really liking the game plan of black to just take the knight, wanting to take the knight themselves. Here, what black should do is either move the knight out of the way, or remember the pawn that just moved? What's worth more than a knight? You're worth more than a knight. However, the rook, you might as well take another thing and attack the rook. That's a 5-point piece, and now you actually did make it to the other side of the board. All right? Let's speedrun a pawn, making it the whole length of the board. So c takes b2 here would be good, then you can move your knight. Black here can move the knight or play pawn takes b2, and black here plays the move knight takes e5. The idea of knight takes e5 is that if for some reason white will not take your knight, you will then proceed to play knight takes on f3. Also, I think knight takes e5 was played out of pity. Like, I think black just is a fair competitor and doesn't want to see their opponent just suffer so much. So instead they play knight takes e5, losing a piece in the center of the board the exact same way that white has. Okay, great. Now black says, all right, I did a good. All right, I evened out the playing field. Let me continue to take. And the rook moves out of the way. At this point, black should probably disregard the attack on this pawn and give this check on b4. And the reason for that is it's very rare that a king just has to move out of check. Like, that's the only choice you have. You can go here and then you have to move, or you have to lose your queen. So bishop b4 is definitely a good move here. It's not a useless check at all. However, black plays a very principled move that Stockfish's third choice, and even though the evaluation only goes from -9 to -4, black is still completely winning because the pawn on b2 is protected. White plays the move bishop to e2. Now, the Stockfish still says it's not too late to come back and force the king to move, by the way. But obviously, black should be castling here. That is just generally a good rule of thumb. If you can't make any more progress in the opening, you don't want to just throw out all the pieces that you currently have. You might as well get your king to safety. The king's a beta. But this is not a bad move. It's not a blunder. It brings the knight in. You're creating some threats, and you'd like to go right here. So white should obviously prevent that. White does not prevent that at all, and in fact, sees the knight arrive, offers it a route to c3. So I made a video called 7 Most Common Chess Mistakes. This is one of them. Attacking a piece and not even asking where it's going to go. Like, if you noticed that this move was going to happen, you would never allow this. So black goes here, this, and this. Now you say, Levy, what is going on? Black is playing a great game. What you told me this was going to be a bad game. I mean, it's moved like, what, 10? Yeah, get ready. Now we have castles, and now what black should do is rescue this knight, get it out somehow, and then proceed to promote. So black does that right away. By the way, it's never too late to castle. Black really doesn't have to rush, but although you would be losing the knight. So knight d2. So knight d2 is just a bad move because you lose the knight in one move, but, you know, black sees this and is very excited to at some point promote the pawn. Again, never too late here to castle or develop a piece. Instead of that, black goes, oh man, I don't want to, I'm very upset I lost my knight. Let me attack their knight. Okay, f6 is not a mistake. You are obviously attacking the knight here. And white plays an absolutely brilliant move here. White plays the move f4. So white defends the knight, which is worth 3 points, with a pawn, which is worth 1 point, effectively losing the trade completely. However, white's idea here is, I have no idea, I'm just assuming this is the idea, is to take and then take, and now black cannot castle. You cannot castle through check. I have absolutely no idea if that's what they were planning, or if white just straight up hung the knight, forgetting that it's not worth as much as a pawn. Maybe forgetting the knight couldn't go backwards. Like, maybe white looked at these moves by the knight and was like, well, they all lose the knight, and I can't go back, so I'm going to go f4. So I don't know. F takes e5, and now in this position, white takes on e5. That was played by black. White takes on e5, preventing the move short castles. By playing the move rook to f3, which attacks a bishop, not only does it attack a bishop, it also allows promotion. So the pawn that you allowed to travel from the other side of the board for absolutely no reason at all. By the way, if in this position you had played bishop takes, you would have been able to take this and not have this headache anymore. But because you took with the knight and clearly have a blind spot for pawns, to the extent that you let it sit on your second rank as an imposter in Among Us and then allowed it an entry to b1 after losing your knight. The idea of f4 was not to take. It apparently was to move the rook and attack the bishop, allowing promotion. Black here plays a move that is so illogical I cannot even... Like, if I gave you 10 guesses, you probably wouldn't even be able to guess black's move here. Black does not queen, obviously. Not yet, anyway. Black also completely doesn't see this. Black plays the move rook f8. Rook f8 is shockingly illogical. Like they would need to study the brainwaves of an individual in an MRI machine to figure this out. Because if you want the rook on f8, why wouldn't you just castle? Did black just forget that they have that? I don't know. I don't know. Black can also play bishop g4. Like, you know, some people get tunnel vision. They see a piece, they want to attack it. I wouldn't even be upset about that move. It's natural. All right? And then if you really want to be a super troll, you can promote to a knight and fork the queen and the rook. If you did that, oh my god, my head would explode. But what is rook f8? Like, at least go bishop c5 check. Anyway, at this point, white plays rook takes a3. And the only reason, I'm telling you, the only reason black found the next move is because black's eyes went this way. Like, you know what I'm talking about? My beginners who are watching this, maybe 600 and 700 and lower, your eyes just forget about a side of a board. But the second you go, oh man, that's my bishop over there. Oh, but I have this. You just forgot about it. You just forgot about it, but because the rook takes, your eyes go that way, and you're like, oh, great. Yeah, I'm up 13 points of material. Cool. So bishop d1. Now, the way you win a position like this is you have to use your material. So you really got to get all the pieces into the game. You got to get your queen, bishop into the game. Your king should have been over here. That's obviously your weakest link right now. Like, for example, PP on the PP. All right? Put pressure on the pinned piece. So bishop g4 here, you're going to take it with the queen next, and you want to use your material advantage to simplify the position down to one where you just win. You have queen versus nothing, right? So queen b6 check is not a bad move. Rook e3 is now blocking. Like, even here, if you want to sack the queen, I wouldn't even hate that, all right? But bishop e6, great move. Just great move, bringing another piece to the battle. White here doesn't really have a whole lot of options, if I'm being totally honest. White should probably safeguard the king, make sure that it can't get mated, so just kind of hide it on h2, and then try to avoid queen trades and try to, like, create an attack. Like, I would love if you could play this move, you know? But you have to unpin yourself, and then rook e5, bishop g4, like something like this. Create an attack on the enemy king. c4. You know, c4 is not the worst move in the world. It's minus 21 according to Stockfish, but what does Stockfish know? c4 is a move, you know? Pawn takes pawn here by black. Queen trade is coming. Opening the queen. But black plays d4. So d4 blocks the pin. So now you can actually play rook takes e5. However, we see that the idea of the move c4 was actually nothing to do with the rook. It was to open up the bishop checking the king. Okay, I like that. And now this. There you go. There you go. Black plays d3, which is a discovered check. And white plays king f1, which is not good. You really should hide the king somewhere and just make sure the king should not be coming back toward the middle. That is not where the king belongs. Or you can play bishop f2, attacking the queen, or even c5. But that's very hard to see, right? You don't have to move your king when it's in check. Black plays queen d6. So in this position is one of the most absurd tactics I've ever seen. It's a pawn forking two queens. If white gets bonus points for any move of this game, it's that move. Have you ever seen a pawn forking two queens? I've never seen this. Now, black here has to go full danger levels. What's worth more than a queen's? The king. So queen b1 check. Now, white here should bring the rook back to attack one queen and the other. Okay, one queen is hanging. Of course, white does not do that, but it is what it is. Now, black has to look around and notice that the queen is hanging and move it. And they do to their credit. However, you can take the rook. And this is why you always have to look for captures. You cannot take this because of this, but you can take this because that rook on f8. The rook on f8 was a bad move, but king to f1 made it a genius move, right? This is why we don't move our king into the middle of the battle, because the rook on the opposite side negates the defense of the rook right here, right? So this is, but okay, queen d4. Queen d4 is a mistake of continuity, as now this is no longer defended, and white proceeds to capture it. King d7, and now white plays the move f5, defending the rook with the pawn. If white here had just followed the yellow brick road to d6, this is a fork of the queen and the king. And white is really, really making a comeback here. However, white plays the move f5, and in a position where we went from minus 32, 39 point, minus 40 to minus 9. Can't really complain, but now it's mate in 5. Okay, it's mate in 5 because simply rook takes pawn, right? You just, I mean, again, that's why your king should not be there. Black finds it, and white has no more king moves. Or so you would think. This move hangs mate in 1, so you shouldn't play it. You should probably block the check with something. But king e1 is played, and now if this queen had just followed the trail, queen g1 is mate. This is how 300s win by mistake, okay? But black's idea was not to checkmate white. Black's idea was, I attacked rook, you defended it, now me take rook. Now, that's still not bad because black now has a 15-point material advantage, has 2 queens on the board, and has mate coming. But if you know anything about the How to Lose at Chess playlist, you know for a fact this game did not end anytime soon. So, white plays queen f2, which hangs a mate, it hangs the queen, obviously. There's also d2, there's also like check, and then mate this way. I mean, there's so many mates. Check, check, take the queen. What does black do? Rook takes f2, the queen has been captured, bishop takes. Now black has a 19-point material advantage. This game can end in so many ways. You just have to give a check, or check like this, force the king away from the bishop and get in, okay? Okay, d2. King e2, and now either queen is mate on d3, okay? Either queen is mate on d3. If you don't see that, give this check. If you don't see that, give this check. If you don't see that, give this check. Sack the queen for 2 bishops. Leave it king and 4 pawns. Queen c3. This is how I know that we're still in for a long game because black doesn't realize what they're doing. All right? White plays bishop b3 check. Black sacks. Actually, correctly. Sacrifices and now can promote another queen. Instead of that, for some unknown reason, black loses the second queen for nothing, and for the first time in about, I don't know, 10 moves, the eval bar shows a little bit of hope for white. All right? It's like when you resuscitate at the hospital, you know, defibrillators. I mean, how long has it been since we've seen any eval in white's favor? Like almost, I mean, it's been so long, right? The eval's just been through the floor. All right? I mean, there's been mate all over the board, constant mate threats, and suddenly a glimmer of hope. Now, this position is still completely lost. It's still completely lost for a couple of reasons. Black should just defend this pawn, but even if black can't defend it, just bring the king, bring the rook, and then take the other pawns. So you're just always going to be able to overwhelm. Rook d8, white plays the move bishop h4, attacking the rook here, and you know, if just like rook d5, for example, you can bring the king all the way and then checkmate. You can break apart the pawns and then win the pawns and then promote your pawn. Rook will always beat a bishop. Rook will always beat a bishop. The only thing you have to be careful about is the bishop moving and attacking your rook and you not doing anything about it. The bishop is a dark squared bishop. It literally can't see half the squares. You just got to keep your rook away from it. Black fails to do that and white fails to capture. g4. Now, black plays g5, because listen, it's never too late to copy your opponent for no reason at all. Takes, now b5. Hanging the rook again, and for the first time in nearly 30 moves, white is winning. White is winning because after this, and something like b4, the endgame is winning for white. The 2 pawns cancel out the 3, because they're totally frozen, you can't go here, and that's it. What ends up happening now is white just has 2 pawns. This is the endgame, 2-on-1. So at some point, white is going to bring the king over, all right? And if you try to defend, I'm just going to crack through, use my pawn as a decoy, and then go this way, take your pawns, and that's the end of the game. But that would be far too sophisticated, and that would not make for a good YouTube video. So obviously, white plays h4, and doesn't actually play the move b4, okay? So you have to control the structure. This is a king and pawn endgame, but pawn play is very important. Black has to play this move just for the constant threat of creating a passed pawn. If you let your structure be completely locked down, you will never, ever, ever win, and you will probably not draw either. So, we have a5. The final phase of the game begins. Now, white should play king takes d2. White plays g5, getting a little bit too aggressive, too close, and the evaluation falls off a cliff one more time as black plays the move a4, blundering the draw right back to white. The players have to bring their kings. a4, now you have to do something called counting in the square, right? So, pawn takes a4, and you have to take this pawn. Otherwise, this pawn will promote, right? So, white plays h5 and is completely lost once again. Completely miscounted. You miscounted that after a3, g6, a2, g7, they're queening with check, which is a very common endgame concept, and they queen first. And this is perhaps the most logical sequence of moves in the entire game. As black promotes, white has to take, and black goes, well, one more check for good measure, and then says, all right, let's go back. Let's take this pawn. Now, white is defending the h pawn to their credit, but it's simply not good enough. And this is why a long time ago, white had to take the pawn on d2, but also white had to prevent the movement of the outside pass pawn here. So keep this in mind for endgames. But now black is completely winning. The way you win this game is you blockade the pawn, and then you bring the king. You can also bring the king, go win this pawn, and then make a second queen. Let's see this technique in action. Here we go. Look at this. Do you have time to take the pawn and stop here? Yes, you do. Block the pawn. All right, don't block the pawn. Fine. h8 queen. He's trying to sneak one by. Oh, okay. All right. All right, fine. We've waited a long time. Unfortunately, now we have to watch the beautiful ladder checkmate technique as the pawn runs down the board and black makes two queens. At this point, to coordinate them, what I always recommend here is to just give checks. But in a situation like this, when the king's out in the middle and not close to the edge of the board, what you do is you play queen f1, cut the king off on one row, and then you just start doing the steps, the ladder mate. And white does exactly that. White cuts the king off in the middle of the board with the move queen h5, plays queen f4 check, plays queen h3 check, plays king e2, sacrifices one queen, and proceeds to lose the second queen, and the game of 2 300s ends in a king versus king draw.